right, and we are recording.
Woo.
Yeah. John, give us a roll in.
Yeah, I wish I had one.
Damn it.
Sing a song.
Damn it, John.
Got a jingle?
Don't you know you're supposed to do everything?
You got a jingle for the show?
Well, even if we had one, I'm sure we'd just get like a
Copyright.
takedown. Yeah, copyright takedown because people are.
Hey, I'm already
douchebags.
using audio that doesn't have any copyright, so, and it's elevator music for sure.
Yeah,
Do.
I kind of wish we had done this like years ago because then like nobody cared and you could just like put like random. I have so much music. I have so much music I would use for this.
I used to use Rammstein for when I did my other one.
I wish I could like just honestly, I would like contact KMFDM and see if I could use like one of their songs or like snippets from one of their songs for the show.
We really need somebody to just create literally just a minute worth of material that I could cut from.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a musician, sadly.
If I can
I
find
wish I
like a
was.
free program online, I would do that because like I used to do that on my cell phone. They used to come with that free software where you could like hit a button and it would create a mix. I used to do that shit all the time. I freaking love that. But I don't know like even how to look that shit up. But so
Does Libog believe in copyrights?
Probably not.
who?
I haven't gotten in trouble for the
That
t-shirts.
Slovenian band. Is they're like all like super left wing too?
That doesn't mean that they're like, yeah, here's our shit. Use it.
I mean, it depends. Like they might be.
But so man, John, you're gonna have a lot of editing at the beginning of this video.
Yeah.
I didn't edit the last time at all. Guess this time I'm gonna have to.
I mean, why? It's just
I don't know.
conversation's nice.
Do you think people are gonna be interested in sitting here
Well-
listening to us chew the fat on our music? Us not really.
I mean, people
talking?
watch Let's Plays, so.
Yeah, that's so true.
I mean, I remember being a kid and like watching people play video games and just like wanting to shoot myself in the face because it was so boring. And like
But it's popular.
now people do that, yeah, for fun.
See, some people though are actually fun to listen to. Like like their commentary of the game is entertaining.
Right.
And that's what makes a good Let's Player. Like I always hated those stupid speed runs.
If I was any good at any games, like I would do Let's Plays. But I'd probably
See,
get banned.
Sometimes it's better that they aren't good at the game, that they are just like playing it around because then they're even funnier. But like that's where you run into like different kinds of comedy. Like you got people that are good at stand-up that are like they're good at scripted things, sticking to the script, working on their timing and figuring that shit out. But then you've got people that are just good at just ragging on people. That
Right.
is just like the first thing that comes to their head. They're just that fucking funny. And like just because you're good at one does not make you good at the other.
This is true.
Like
So
I like to
like
think
what do we Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna. I was continuing on with that random conversation of like, I think typically I'm a pretty funny person, but you put me up in front of a crowd, and like I'm gonna be like,
You're gonna lock down.
Yeah.
I'll like, this other night I had this joke, but I forgot it.
I got invited to an improv group once in college when I first started because they thought I was hilarious, and then they told me I couldn't cuss, and I quit.
Womp womp.
I was just like, this isn't gonna work because I can't not do that. Sorry.
Like I always thought that I was good at improv, but like I've never like I wasn't in college long enough to take those classes.
I didn't take any classes. I like ran into a group of people and had a few conversations with them, and I guess I said something that was because I mean, you guys know me. I don't censor myself.
Yeah.
And I will go there no matter where there is, and they thought it was funny, and I don't know. But then when it got to like it being like a school sanctioned thing, it was well, you can't cuss, you can't, say
Yeah.
this or that, and I'm just like, okay, I'm not censoring myself for this bullshit fucking
So
organization.
so like with that, like going into that, like you all have heard some of the conversations that I've had with myself, like back whenever we worked together.
Yeah.
And like I of course did not censor myself. I like
No.
some of the shit that I said that I'm sitting here, like I had an elderly lady sitting across the table from me as I'm sitting here looking at the TV, thinking like sitting here openly talking about rape. Like it it was not the best time, but at the same time, like I understood my audience, and like I even had people come up to me like saying like I cannot believe that she is not telling on you,
Right.
and I'm like you don't know. I'm like that's because I'm like some of the things that I say. I'm like she knows 100% without a doubt that I'm not being serious about anything that I'm saying. I'm
Looking
just saying
back
it because I'm thinking
on
it.
looking back on that, I don't know how I didn't get fired
Well, it's
several times over, like for the things that I said in front of people who were obviously offended.
yeah. Well, I mean, like, I don't ever remember being offended by you, like ever.
Yeah, but
Um,
that didn't matter. It was like everybody else around me, except for
well,
you and John.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
well,
yeah,
I mean, the last week I was there, I was in the manager's office after telling somebody, fuck it, and I threw up my hands and just didn't do it, and I walked away.
well, like the
Oops.
whole, like where I was going with that is that like a lot of that shit that I used to say, like you probably won't catch me saying that today, like at least not as fluently. Like there's
Yeah.
just a lot of things in this. Like I mean, shit. I haven't worked there for going on 4 years, and I mean, just even in that time frame, like some of the shit that I would say, like I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't really, probably wouldn't say that in such as open in a setting as I would back then.
Well,
Like
things have
I'm a
changed now. I
yeah.
mean, too.
Well,
That's a good topic to talk about, by the way. We could talk about like censorship and
that's where
whatever
I
this
was.
cancel culture thing or
I was
the
trying not to like just shove those words
political
in here.
correctness, if
Yeah,
you
I
will.
wasn't trying to shove that, but I was kind of trying to indirectly talk about that.
Yeah. You were
Because that's
taking the long way, like the scenic route, and I just like
yeah,
rolled in a tank.
that's me. That is me. Like let's take a cruise here. But
I just
like I know a lot of a lot of other people that I talk to like actually have like they genuinely have an issue like honestly just with that term in general. Like as soon as you create that term like fuck PC culture. And
yeah.
I'm just kind of like, but I'm like at the same time I'm like is it not needed? I'm like we can come back to it. But I'm like right now I'm like just due to the sake of on how people talk about one another, how people handle one another. I'm like I'm like in a world on where right now, like you piss somebody off and be like, oh, dude, just like, why you gotta take everything so serious, dude? Like, I was just joking, and it's like everything can be a joke nowadays,
Right.
and it's like and because of that, like because of those pussies that fucking use that cop out to be like, no, man, I'm just joking. I didn't really want to piss you off, but like this is what I actually meant, but
Yeah.
it's just a joke
You
now.
really did
because
mean to piss him off.
Yes.
Right.
And because of that, like they've ruined it for everybody.
Basically. I mean, the people that do
And
go too far, the people that do say things that are absolutely just completely out of line, and then they use that whole like, oh, I was just playing around, and it's like, no, you weren't.
yeah,
You know.
It's like not a single bit, not any other part of your being has contributed to making me believe otherwise.
Yeah.
It's
Like
so
if you're
therefore
a
it's not
blatant
fucking joke.
neo-Nazi and you're making Jew jokes, like, or you're a blatant white supremacist and you're making jokes about black people, or you're using slurs, or you're like anti-gay, and you're, you know, saying things that are just like not okay. Like, I mean, it's context.
Yeah.
Truly.
Well,
Well,
like I think
I
that
make-
even
I make jokes about Ashley's mother. I say every time I get sick, I know she's practicing witchcraft again. I'm not really kidding. It's all true. Or I work out at the gym every day because I'm trying to outlive that bitch. If she dies, what do we got to live for? Yeah, stuff like that.
I
you know?
mean,
And by the way, the Supreme Court just rejected that motherfucker's Texas lawsuit.
Yeah,
I would hope
Yeah.
they
I
did.
was just gonna get in on that, but yeah.
Did I say motherfucker? I meant
Good.
I
Bad
mean, he
uncensored.
fucks those ladies from Mother Russia all the time, so why not?
I mean, it's
Yeah,
it's
there
pretty
you
bad when it's front page on Fox.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, for real.
When did that happen? Like
In
I'm
the
sitting
last
here
2
like going
minutes.
along with it like some
I was gonna say it's
jackass.
been the last like couple hours because I haven't.
Yeah,
No,
last
like
time I-
just
last
now,
few
it's
minutes.
breaking
Okay.
news.
All right.
Yeah,
I just now realized that I was like being that jackass that's like laughing at a joke that really doesn't fucking get it because I'm like, I actually have no idea what the hell you all are talking about. I'm like, I didn't realize that they had just turned that down.
Yeah.
And the last at 6, according to this story, 6:38. What time is it now?
7.
20 minutes ago. 20 minutes ago.
That's awesome. I'm actually really happy about that. But at the same time, so like so speaking of that, like the interesting thing on where like I'd heard a story about that, and they were talking about on how like if this actually goes through, they're like, yes, it will suck now, but the precedent that you will open for states suing other states, they're like, it will open a floodgate. And that's something that I forget to realize that I'm like, oh, whenever shit gets that high up, like you like lawyers use that shit in court, like to be like, hey, this court case from here, and the person in particular brought up like lawsuits from California to Texas, like California suing Texas about not having strict enough gun laws or strict enough pollution or like strict
Right.
enough anything.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, holy shit, I didn't realize. I'm like,
Yeah, I mean, it
Did
could
not even-
definitely open the door for some shenanigans like that.
yeah.
Right.
Imagine being for
And-
states' rights and then suing other states because of how they run their states because you don't like it.
Yeah.
Makes
But
sense.
Well, that's not
Yeah.
how we do it down here in Mississippi.
Right. But states' rights.
but
Yeah.
We use the slip in
And-
Mississippi.
Wow.
but like right now,
we
like,
electrocute
I'm
people
just-
without the sponge.
Oh God, the
Like-
smell.
Yeah. But like the whole
Yeah, got some experience there you want to talk about, John?
nope.
We can talk about
but, like,
chicken
the
farming
whole-
if you'd like.
Oh God.
no, no, I'm not in the mood.
Everyone who grew up in a farm is like, nope.
No, but like, you know, like the whole like getting back to the whole like PC culture thing. Like my wife and I have been talking about it a lot here lately, and it's just been kind of like because that's something like her and I both have like you know, and I believe all of us have grown up like you know there were certain words like shit even just like 4 or 5 years ago that it was like. Okay, like that was cool to use, but now it's not.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah,
know,
look at
it's
some of
just
the Christmas songs that are no longer okay. I
Hmm.
mean, you know, the one about the guy keeping a chick in his house by getting her drunk.
oh yeah,
Right.
I mean, I never
But, I mean,
analyzed that song till they brought that up, and I'm like, wow,
oh wow, date
I mean,
rape. That's fantastic.
yeah, that's not cool at all.
yeah, but like whenever you sit there and you start thinking about that, and you're like, man, like, why have we gotten so sensitive? But at the same time, you're like, man, hasn't this shit been going on long enough? Like you think about like the LGBTQ thing, like basically everything that has to do with them, with that group, and it's just like
Rainbows.
you know,
Right.
yeah. Well, not even just that, but like, I was watching a clip of Bill and Ted, and like the two men, like Bill and Ted hugged each other, and then they like, oh, thank God we're still alive, and then they backed off awkwardly and looked at each other and like, fag, and it's just like, yeah, that clip didn't age well, did it? And it's just like,
So we got some bad news.
What?
Well, since we're still using the free program here, they're going to cut us off in 9 minutes 30 seconds.
Are you
Oh
serious?
no! Then we're
Yeah.
done.
Well, what does
Damn
this
it.
program cost? I'm curious.
I think it's like $100 and some a year for it. I'd have to look it up.
Like, I've got a feeling that they're really going to try to strong arm this shit for right now, because they're like, man, like,
Everyone's
we
using
didn't
it
even
because of COVID.
exist. Yeah. And they're like, they got to use us. And what are you going to use? Spotify?
I don't know. If anyone has any suggestions, please leave a comment below.
Skype.
Yeah, truly.
That costs too, probably.
Oh, all right. Well, shit. We got to pick a
Well,
subject and stick to it. Like
you
round
know-
robin here.
I mean, we could do like a two-parter.
That's probably what I'm going to do,
Okay.
to be honest.
We'll just start a new meeting.
Yeah.
Start an intermission
I got
and
an
play
hour
a
left on my
jingle.
battery.
What's that? Dad?
I got an hour left on my battery.
Oh, okay. That's fine. That's good.
Oh, sign us up.
Oh, what's
Um,
that?
What'd you say?
I don't know. What's going on?
John.
I
Bill?
don't know.
I think they're talking to you, Bill, right?
The last thing I said was I've got an hour on my battery.
No, okay.
Oh, okay. I can't hear you.
I'm sure anyone watching was like, what the fuck did they just do? All have a seizure at once?
Yep.
Breaking up.
Internet connection.
So speaking of stuff like that and PC culture and slurs and things like that, like, you know, and like what you were saying with like, you know, like the LGBT, you know, Q or whatever plus community. I don't even know how many letters there are. And that's legit. Like, I'm not trying to be a dick. I don't
No
know.
X's or Z's in there.
Huh? What'd you say?
No X's or Z's in there.
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, but anyway, like, I mean, and I was made fun of a lot, you know, as a kid because of the way I dress, like, in the way that I present myself. Like, you know, obviously I dress like a dude. I mean, I'm fine with that. I don't really care at this point in my life what other people think. And I freely, you know, used to joke and use, you know, what are now considered to be, you know, pretty serious slurs. Like, I mean, I still say the word gay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's gay, or this is gay, or you're gay. I mean, like, but it's context. Like, I'm not gonna go up to someone who's gay and be like, dude, you're gay. Like, you know, in like a derogatory way. Like, that's shitty, and I know what it's like to be picked on because people think you're gay. It is a special kind of hell. Socially, particularly when you're a kid and you're a teenager. And I would not wish that on anyone, but at the same time, like, I do think that there is a contextual, you know,
Difference.
like, yeah, and that there are acceptable and unacceptable situations to use these words.
Oh,
Sorry, go ahead. You're fine.
no.
I'll keep going.
Yeah. Finish your thought.
No, that was it.
So it's always
Okay,
like
well, like-
if you're going to say it, you got to smile when you say it. Otherwise, you're not.
Yeah.
I'm good at that. But I agree with you on that. Actually, just like with the whole with the context thing. But like as of right now, it's just like it seems like things have gotten so heated, like to like use the words like first off, like to use the word fag freely is just a complete no at this point in
Yeah,
time.
exactly.
Like that,
Exactly.
there's no reason to openly use that word.
No.
Like even now, like I'm kind of like shit. I don't want to say it, but I don't want to say the F word because it's like how many freaking F words do we have?
Right.
But at the same time, like to use words like to me like to use words like gay in a negative context is something that I haven't done in actually a very long time. And like I get what you're saying, like with like the context and everything, and you're exactly right. Like there is a difference in the way in which you use the word, but I think that using it in a negative term, especially right now, like
Right.
hell, like we went from a presidential, like from a 8-year reign of on where it's like no, like we want to turn that back into a positive word to now on where it's working its way back to a negative term. And I think using it as a negative term at this point in time is a huge, it just needs to stop because we need to change that mindset.
Right. Absolutely.
It's
I
not
agree.
like I believe that we probably all here believe that gay marriage is a right and that it needs to
Yeah.
that is something that needs to be a constant at this point in time. Like, but like right now, like they're worried about those rights being taken away again.
Absolutely. I mean,
And
it's like that for a lot of. I mean, it's not just gays, and I mean, but that's a big part of it. It's pretty much anyone who's not a white guy. I mean,
Anyone not
Well,
covered in the
Who's-
you brought
Constitution.
up race,
yeah,
uh,
white Christian male.
you brought
Like that's pretty much.
you
well,
you bring up
like
white, and in terms of that, you bring up race, and basically what you have in these people that are anti-gay and who
Yeah.
are now licensed by Trump's behavior to be a racist
Right.
or
Exactly.
religiously bigoted. They are they're bigoted, but their bigger gripe is they can't be overtly so. They've been bitching about that since the '60s. I'm old enough to recall. I recall the first time I went to school with a black kid. Okay,
Yeah.
and in terms of the N word, which predated the F word that we're talking about here, and is it's hard to say now, but I will tell you this: when I was a kid, it rolled off the tongue pretty easy. And the
Right.
flip side of that, because of my complexion, I was called it more than once. It's just
Yeah.
you may not be able to see it right now, but in the summertime, I've even been asked by black kids if I was black.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is, people felt very free to use the term, and I've seen the progression of what was acceptable. Also, the newspaper in Washington D.C. when I was a kid, if they identified somebody by name and then by age, and then they do it by race, white, Negro. Okay, and Negro is not the acceptable word now. Then it became black, African American. I don't know what it is today. I mean, just the point is, it's a progression. You can't really hold somebody today hold somebody to the standard of today that existed 50 years ago. But
Right.
the bigger gripe I'm seeing from these people is that they're bitching because they can't be overtly so, and they weren't really overtly so until Trump licensed them 4 years ago to be that way. They can talk about the Mexicans, and which is basically talking about American Indians.
I would.
They talk about Islamic like they would like Hitler did the Jews.
Well, how
Yeah.
about the virus name, the Kung
Yeah.
flu and the Wu
Oh, yeah.
flu?
I call it the Trump virus myself.
MAGA virus.
like
Moron virus.
I mean,
It's the same thing. Moron.
I kind of disagree with you on the whole thing about them. I mean, yeah, they're. It's not that well. It's not so much that they're pissed off about not being able
Oh,
to say those things. It's that they're pissed off that they're being called out on it because they've always gotten away with saying those things.
yeah.
so we
No.
have less than a minute, so just gonna go ahead and close this out, and we'll be right back.
All right.
Okay.
Let's close
Aw.
back on.
Okay.
All
So
right.
anyway,
We're back.
we're back, and in the interim, we were talking about cops and their how the woman who was responsible for putting together and presenting the maintaining the COVID-19 data in Florida was raided basically by a bunch of officers who were not in uniform, and the problem with officers doing things that have to do with their job not in uniform. And
Yeah, I think 100% if, officers are doing a, no knock or a knock warrant and they're not in uniform, they bust down your door and you take one of them out, you should not be held accountable for that.
no, you shouldn't, because you don't know, who they are. You don't know if they're actual cops. You can say you're a cop all you
Because
want, but that doesn't mean anything.
you can go on Cheaper Than Dirt right now and buy everything those guys were wearing today.
Right.
So
If you're
Right.
like if you're in the military, outside of, I don't know if anyone can think of some special circumstances, I mean, maybe if you're like, spec ops or something, it's one thing. But, if you're doing your day-to-day duties in the military, you better damn well be in your uniform. And it better be within regulation. And in theater,
you better be licensed to be without.
Yeah. In theater, if you are not in a uniform, you aren't necessarily allowed or afforded the protections of, that come with being an actual, soldier.
yeah, you can be treated as a spy.
Right.
And that's, that's
Or a
kind of like
terrorist.
how, exactly. I mean, that's kind of how it should be with cops. I feel like if you're not in uniform and you're conducting police duties, and you injure someone or kill someone, or you get injured or killed, not only should you have absolutely zero right to qualified immunity, which really shouldn't exist anyway, but either way, but you should also forfeit any kind of benefits you would receive as a result of getting injured, or any kind of defense, as a result of doing those things under the guise of doing your duty.
I mean, Bill, what's some of the legal things that would pertain to that?
In terms of being not identified,
Yeah,
if they're not identified by, I mean, anybody can pretend to be an officer, okay?
Right.
And
right.
you probably read news stories about people being arrested for impersonating an officer. Well, when do you know they're impersonating, and when do you know they're real? Unless you see the proper identification. And
Right.
even then, you got to be a little bit weird, because, like you say, you can purchase that on the internet. It's very
And a lot of times cops
easy
don't want
to
to give you
do.
the identification.
Like those clowns in Portland that were taking people off the street without identifying themselves. Sorry,
Right.
if you don't identify yourself as a police officer, you're John Wayne Gacy. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you're bait for a 9mm between the eyes, and that's a justified shooting.
Yeah.
And I've got no problem with it. Now, I will qualify that by saying there are certain agencies, certain police personnel that are authorized to be plain clothes, okay?
Yeah.
Well, that's all well and good. They still got to carry identification to prove who they are,
Right.
Yeah.
but it's a rough game. And like you made the comparison to the military, it's a tough game. I mean, I can point you to a YouTube video for 3 German gentlemen that were busted around the Battle of the Bulge in American uniforms. And their condition of being in American uniforms was cured by a firing squad.
Yeah.
I mean, it
I mean-
shows the actual execution.
Now, would that be a viable option if unmarked officers were trying to serve a warrant for you to pick up the phone and try to get them identified, or have another law enforcement agency come out and identify them first?
Why would they be afraid of that unless they were illegitimate? That's my take on that.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
and truly, the defund the police movement, like Biden said, and it was reported today, that phrase was used to hack at Democrats, and it was very costly. We still won, but it was costly. Um, uh, it's well, police get all turned on and excited and hard on because there's marijuana or something involved, because there's drugs involved, because that's the policy they're enforcing. Well,
Right.
they're kind of the victim of the policies they're enforcing. And if you strip them of some of these policies, like the drug war, which is a 50-year failure or more,
Mhm.
if you took that away, I think you take away a lot of the problem. I mean, poverty
Well,
all generates criminal activity as defined by the legislature because it's opportunity. Illegal activity is it's a moneymaker.
All right.
Well, how many body cameras have been exposed on officers planting drugs on an individual recently as well? That would no longer be an issue.
There's one out there where the guy forgot he had his body cam on and did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that.
That was pretty good. But truly, body cams aren't. I mean, in Grant County, in this local area, I don't remember the last time I saw a body cam. I think they should be required.
Yeah.
They should be required.
Yeah, I mean they're small, they're inconvenient. Yeah, I mean
They're inexpensive.
yeah.
And by the way, cameras also. I haven't seen a camera from a car either. State police don't. They're broken. Convenient.
That's a problem.
Well, that should be automatic. It's thrown out then, shouldn't it?
Yeah,
You
honestly.
would think so. You would think so.
No,
But,
like
how long must they be not maintained? It's been years.
like with all this that I'm hearing right now, like the first thing that came to my head is the situation that's going on in California right now, on where the I think it's the sheriff's department, on where they're talking about like, no, we're not going to enforce this mask rule. And like the thing that it has brought up with me is like, like we talk about this drug war, and it's just like, yeah, you talk to a cop individually, and it's like, yeah, like marijuana, I don't really worry about it as much as I do these other drugs. And it's like, so you're picking favoritism right there.
Yeah.
Like, just because like this, and it's like, but yet you choose to enforce it when you want, basically when you choose to. And it's like there is zero accountability there, like as to when you choose, to enforce it and when you don't. And like I've got friends that have favored in that ability, like they have favored in the fact of like, due to on how they chose to enforce the law that they had at that point in time. It has favored them. But like with that being said, that like how many times does that happen? How many times does that not happen? Like my friend in particular is just like, he was under the age of 18. He got pulled out, like he ran a stop sign. Not only did he run a stop sign, but he didn't have a seatbelt on. And then once he got a seatbelt, or once they did that, they found weed in the car. And he's like, I'm not high right now, but it's just one of those situations on where like he also was under, like he had also had prior issues. So like they held him over a weekend, but they decided to drop the marijuana charge along with the running the stop sign, and just charged him with the seatbelt. So it helped him in that matter. For the cops to have that freedom. But like whenever you start talking about like what's going on in California right now, with not like, as of right now, like in certain spots, it's the law to not be wearing a mask, and the cops are just like, we're not going to enforce it.
Yeah. Well, it's like,
And it's
and
just, like,
it just
that's an
shows how
issue.
arbitrary the laws are. I mean, and how
Yeah.
arbitrary the enforcement is.
Well, I mean, how
And,
many sheriffs in this country have said over and over, especially when a Democrat is in office, that if there's any gun control laws, they're not going to enforce it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and they're doing the same thing now with the mask laws saying, well, we're just not going to do it.
No. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, like, let's face it, like, our prisons are overcrowded as is, our detention centers are overcrowded. You know, so it's just, and they know that, you know, the cops know that. They aren't stupid. And it's just like, so what you're basically saying is at any given point in time, you can do whatever it is that you want to do. Like, you understand, like, they genuinely understand the fact that they have pretty much no accountability at all. They can do whatever it is that they want. And in a lot of situations, like whenever you watch these videos online, like, they know it. They know that they have nobody to answer to. They know that even if they do have somebody to answer to, they'll never see there's no risk of them ever seeing a jail cell.
Yeah.
And that's an issue and that is a huge issue.
Well, and that's what they're fighting for right now, is like they're fighting to maintain that status.
Because they're the
Yes.
good bad guys.
Yes. Like, they're good whenever, you know, like, you know, whenever you absolutely have to have them to be good. Like, like, there are those, like, I'm not going to sit
If
here
you're
and
lucky.
say there's no good cops, but it's just like, I've got, you know, plenty of family members that are police officers, and it's just like, yeah, you know, like, it's great whenever, you know, you have to have them, but it's like, you all get utilized way too often. Like, there's no reason as to why you all should be, you know, some of these calls that you all go on, there's no reason for you all to even be there.
Well, and it's
To
not
me,
just
if
that.
there's
It's
not
like,
violence being, if there's not violence being involved, if there's not, like, if there's not any illicit law being broke, but the potential of a law being broken, there is no reason for them to be called.
Well, I mean, if someone's breaking into your house, what's the difference between calling the police and calling the mafia or some gang to come to your house and help? I mean, really,
right.
Well,
they're
that's
armed too.
That's what's happened with the war on drugs. That's created a situation in which police are just one more gang on the street.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And depending on how they choose to act at any point in time is completely on them.
And I mean, I don't know about everyone else, but I really feel protected when I'm, you know, driving down the street and I see about 4 cop cars together and they're all out, you know, bullshitting instead of doing their jobs.
Well, the police, I deal with police all the time, and then they're nice guys, and they do what they do, but they're basically just people. There's no difference between the police officer you meet on the street or in the court or wherever than somebody at Walmart. And there's no greater intellect there. There's a greater ability to manipulate because they do have the authority, and that's intimidating. I deal with the Cabinet for Families and Children. The Cabinet for Families and Children will go out to a house and demand entry because they want to investigate, and the parties inside don't let them in. So the cabinet will call a gray uniform KSP, and they'll go with them to the door, not because the KSP has any more right to enter the home, but because the homeowner is intimidated by the gray uniform.
Right.
Well, nothing pleases me more than when the homeowner sends both of them away. I mean, basically, I want to buy all my clients a doormat that says "Get a warrant."
I mean, you shouldn't have to do that.
No, you shouldn't.
You
but
know, that's
I had a
But
guy
I mean,
today.
you know, everyone likes to make fun of like state employees that are like road workers, and you got 5 of them standing around while one's digging a hole. That's always
Right.
the kind of the joke. But what's the difference between that and, you know, you got 4 state-owned police cars sitting there idle and 4 officers that are idle? I mean, why isn't there the same stigma?
And unions protect lazy people, but not the cops.
Yeah.
The
You know.
cooperation of the average citizen with the police officer is to their detriment. You know, when they say "shut up," remain silent, do it. Don't do like my client I had today, who not only went to the police station and talked to the cops, then cooperated and went to the polygraph test and talked to the cops.
Oh,
And
Lord.
every time he opened his mouth, it burned. You know, the stupid human tricks beside the road. You're driving down the road, and then once you get out of the car and dance on one foot, you don't have to do that. They're going to arrest you anyway.
For real.
Just don't do it.
I mean, but the thing is too is like, and Derek, you said something about, the cops, they're generally there when you need them, and it's like, honestly, yes and no. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I've had experiences personally where the cops have been there when I've needed them. Just because they happened to be within the vicinity, and they were car accidents, and there was not really any way of not being there. But at the same time, like, and this is anecdotal, but how many times do you hear stories about people, particularly women, being stalked or raped or sexually assaulted or even being subjected to domestic violence, and then the cops come in and they're, oh well, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah, like I mean,
That happens way too much, but there is, and there are laws against it, but they choose not to do anything, and
yeah.
that's a problem.
Like I've heard a lot of those stories as to where like you've got somebody like even with a restraining order on where it's like yeah, but they're not breaking it while we're here right now,
Right.
and like it's like okay, you can do that now, but it's like there's so many we see so many other times as to where it's like okay, they broke a law, but it's like they're not doing it right here and now, but yet you still act as though they're still guilty of a crime that they did years before.
Right.
Like like let's bring up the situation of George Floyd. It's like yeah, he's not a he may not have been an angel in the eyes of the law, but it's like at that same point in time, like what was his crime at that point in time? He was doing absolutely nothing violent, but just because of his past, it's like you've seen even not only of his past, but the past that he's also already paid his time for.
Yeah.
He paid his time and his due for that. And it's like, but now you choose to, we know where we're at now.
Right. They want to bring
And
that up as if it's relevant in, current actions and
as
and
if like,
situations.
oh, well, he's a lifetime criminal. And it's like,
Right.
but why is he a lifetime criminal? Like, like that's the questions that we don't ask.
Yeah. What does that say about our justice
We
system?
do. Yeah. And, we act like it's okay. And it's like, it's not. And like, whenever I say that, like, cops do have their use, but I like overuse is not always a good thing. Like, I mean, like I consider them to be honestly to be kind of now that I'm thinking about it, also kind of like an antibiotic. Like it's overused to the point on where it's having a reverse effect here.
Right.
And now like you speak with the Black community, and that's not the case. Like they've been like brutalized since forever in this country. And like I know that people talk about like, oh well, like we've had the civil rights movement, they're now more like equal to us than ever. If anything, like now we're the white people are the minority now, and it's just like shut up. Like no, it's just like it's like we've been gutting our taxes ever since the fucking 60 or since the 70s and the 80s, and it's just like okay, like with that it's like who actually hurts from that? It's like you've got a small group of white people that get affected by that, but a large group of any minority for that fact that gets affected by that. And like, and it's just like we've been doing that since then, and it's like we've just seen a continuance of that. And it's like so, and I'm like that's why people are like systemic racism does exist, and it's like people refuse to admit that.
Yeah.
And then like, but like getting back to like the whole police situation, it's just like it just seems like we're at a stalemate because they don't trust them and they don't trust the other. Like, neither party trusts one another. And with that, it seems like they're both out to get one another.
Well,
And there has to be give and take. And the give has to be from the people that have the power, not from the people without the power, because they're already given so much.
Well, the inner city is a situation where the drug war is the justification for the heavy police presence, and the heavy police presence, I won't say it's entirely justification, but it's a large part of it, and the heavy police presence in the inner city, particularly puts police officers. They're basically, I'm not calling them Nazis, but they have that same authority, police authority.
Yeah.
And they suppress and oppress the people in the ghetto. It's like Warsaw Ghetto, 1943, except that these people are doing it in our names, supposedly to fight a good cause, which I find to be not only useless but detrimental to people across the spectrum. So they're, you can't call them Nazis, but you can certainly see the principles of policing between 1943 Warsaw and 2020 Portland or Minneapolis or
It's the
Louisville.
same dynamic. I mean, it's the same general, situation and
And
scenario.
I
They're still
think
uniform, they carry a gun, they use the club.
one of the biggest problems with trying to talk to people about police reform is they think you want to get rid of the cops, and it's like, a lot of these situations, these cities have reduced the number of officers, but they've replaced people with EMTs and psychologists, and they have shown great success.
But they also want to bring up the people that have all like the states and the cities that have cut the funding to the police officers on where crime has increased, but they neglect the reason as to why they cut that funding in the first place. Just counties being too poor to really to even have it. And it's like, okay, it's like, same thing with our current healthcare situation. It's like, okay, if you want to repeal and replace, that's great. That's fantastic. But if you're just cutting it just because you don't have the money, that means like not only is your county poor, but that usually also means that the people inside that county are poor.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, they use that against
desperation.
They use that against Amy McGrath in the election, with those ads with the nurses saying that the rural hospitals were going to close because she wants universal health care. And it's like, those hospitals are going to close whether they have universal health care or not.
If universal health care was a thing, they would be funded. They would stay open.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Instead of, closing because most of the populations are not big enough to sustain them. And B, they're just constantly running in a deficit because having a capitalist model for healthcare makes absolutely zero sense whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, like I've been asked a lot, like me, like, don't get me wrong, like I definitely partake on our capitalist situation that we have currently, the way that we have things currently. I definitely, am indulgent in that even. And I get people asking me like, well, like, why do you have a thing against capitalistic society? And I'm like, it's because I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm like, it doesn't really encourage people to do anything.
No, not this one.
Like, yeah. And they're like, well, how do you say that whenever we've had all these advancements? I'm like, well, our advancements have become stagnant for quite some time now. And I'm like, I haven't created anything. And I'm like, and I know a lot of other people that haven't created anything, but I'm like, you can't sit here and tell me that more people wouldn't be willing to take that risk if they didn't have guaranteed healthcare, if they didn't have to worry about like some of the basic shit that we don't need to worry about.
Exactly.
Like I understand paying for for your electric and water bill, but I'm like, at that same point in time, I'm like, does it need to be as high as it is? I'm like, like we are like as human beings, we are consuming more and more, but it's also just kind of like we've also got higher efficiency items out there available as well. Like, why are we paying so much for solar panels? Why are we doing this? And like you are paying for the creation of those items, but it's also like, it's like, honestly, like it for me, a lot of it boils down to healthcare.
It's not, I mean, even just going back to capitalism, though, it's not just capitalism. It's the particularly toxic form of capitalism that exists in the United States. I mean, that's the issue that I have. Like we have this idea, you know, you hear people all the time that they just parrot the same lines about, oh, capitalism is wonderful, it's the only viable economic system, and that's what's taught in, you know, basic econ classes, by the way. Thanks, Greg Mankiw, or however the fuck you pronounce your name. You know, the guy that writes all the textbooks for basically every university. But anyway, like you have, you know, this idea that there can be no government intervention whatsoever, that government intervention is bad, that regulation is bad, that everything has to be that the free market will, you know, the invisible hand will just take care of everything you know, and everything will just be perfect, right? But what we've got instead is we have a society where almost everything is controlled by conglomerates. Like we have monopolies in damn near every major industry. No one can compete with that. They are actively in some industries. They are actively suppressing innovation because they don't want to lose their position at the top of the, you know, the food chain. You know, oil is a
Well,
perfect example.
unrestrained capitalism is a ticket to feudalism, which is what
It
we're
really
looking
is
at right now.
a type of feudalism.
And everything, that's right, oligarchy, everything becomes obsolete. And one of the biggest problems this country has is they want to hold on to the past, to the present. It's so afraid of the future, and it's just unavoidable, the future, you know.
Right.
But capitalism, just like anything else, can become obsolete as AI comes on board, as trucks start driving themselves, as more robots come online. Rather than take advantage of that and make lives better for everybody, they call it socialism or communism, and
Yeah.
require people to use primitive means of production to produce whatever they're going to produce, and at a greater cost.
People are
Um,
working for the sake
yeah,
of work, and in case in point is literally, you know, doing what we were doing, you know, in the
Yeah.
warehouse we worked in.
Yeah.
We had people
right, right.
standing at tables taping boxes together
Well, I mean,
for a paycheck. You know.
like
Just want to
back
say
then.
9 minutes, guys.
Okay.
Oh shit! Damn it! I missed that unlimited. But like, let's go back to like the Great Depression. Like the state and the government would pay people to dig holes just to turn around and fill them back in. And it's just like,
They
is
also
that
pay them to
not like,
produce things. They
yeah,
produce quite
like,
a bit. They produce buildings. You'll see buildings right here is the post office built during the Depression era. The national parks. Not all of it was busy work, but I
yes,
Yeah.
understand what you're saying. But
but
they
is that
also produce things.
like a lot? Like I say that, but it's just kind of like, you know, like that just shows the monotony. Like my example just shows like this is what we did just to make sure that people could afford like. But like, and I don't even know if they could even actually afford the food back then that they actually could. But the point that I was getting at is I'm like, that was like the beginning of like essentially like a UBI program, basically.
Yeah.
But like back then we didn't have the AI or the robotics to even like, they would have thought that shit was like insane back then. And I'm just kind of like, right now, like we have all this programming, all this software, all the hardware and stuff like to utilize right now, but it would cause like we would have to completely change our infrastructure the way that it is today. Like, and with that, like part of me is kind of like, and this is kind of like something that I've been trying to figure out in my head, is that I'm like, I kind of like, with all the technology that's out there, I kind of think that like a lot of these major companies are kind of like, okay, if we do that, you know, then we're going to have, you know, like I'm not 100% certain as to on how many people Radial actually, you know, some of these companies like Amazon actually hire in the States, but it's just kind of like, okay, if you hire, you know, 75% less employees than what you have currently, like, you know, during Christmas time, it's like, okay, well, if we don't hire them, how many people are actually going to be able to afford what it is that we're selling?
Yeah.
So how many of these companies are actually causing forcing a bottleneck in order to prevent robotics and automation taking over from jobs to prevent them from hiring people, just under the simple fact of if we don't hire, 20 some thousand people, that's going to be 20,000 people that can't afford our goods that we are selling right now.
Right.
And I think this is where a program like what former President Bill Clinton was talking about, where you have a limited 3-day work week for individuals, and the rest of the time you are on a government stipend.
Yeah.
I think they need to work on.
Who's paying for the insurance?
Yeah.
Who's paying for the infrastructure or the employment you're talking about? I mean, that's more costly than it sounds like. Certainly, you got people working, but there's
if we could
equipment,
tax people.
there's materials, there's insurances, there's all sorts of things that have to be considered. I think that the universal basic income, Andrew Yang had a good idea.
Mhm.
I think he was about half right. It should have been twice what he said it was,
Right.
because money trickles up. Money does not trickle down. Money trickles up. People that pay their bills sustain the economy.
Yeah.
You got a healthy flow of currency. It's like a healthy flow of blood. You cut off your with a tourniquet the blood to your arm to save blood. It's going to go badly. Same situation with funding for
people that still believe in the trickle.
Just like time is money. I use the example of the Brent Smith Bridge in 2003. If they replaced it, $500 million. They didn't replace it. They didn't want to spend the money. So today it will cost $3 billion to replace.
Well,
try to save $1.
To me, people that still believe in the trickle down economic theory, I'm just kind of like you are the most simple person that I've ever met. Like you are simpler than me, and that's saying something. I understand
that's economic theory is religion, and you can't fight that.
Well, that's
yeah.
Well, that goes back to what you were saying. I thought about this earlier. You were talking about capitalism and how people are devoted to it. They're devoted to it like a religion.
It is. It's a civic religion. That's what this is.
Religion to these people, and it's just as fantastical as some religions too.
Yeah. South Park has an amazing episode on that, by the way, because of course they do. But like to me, I'm just kind of like, if you like, as far as the trickle down theory works, it's like whenever we actually initially started this, I think like it was. I won't say it's completely flip-flop, but our income inequality was a lot closer to one another. But ever since we've implemented trickle-down economics, it has grown differently. Like we have grown more and more separate. It seems like every freaking year. And I'm like, if that is not an indication that it does not work the way that you think that it works and that it should work, I'm like, you just simply have not done your research. Just because they employ so many people and does not mean a damn thing to me, especially if they're turning around and a huge percentage of those people are still qualified for government assistance is a huge issue to me.
Right.
Walmart had to live that down because all their employees were eligible for benefits. I think they're working away from that now because of the image. Target, for instance, they do provide, I think $15 is their minimum. Some states have passed $15 minimum wage. The whole issue is, if you don't take care of those people at the bottom, those people at the bottom don't take care of those people at the top.
No.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, and
hey,
that's
just real quick, do you guys want to keep going, or do you want to wrap it up here? Because we got 2 minutes.
I will bail.
All right.
I made myself drowsy.
All right.
The last point that I'm gonna say with that, and I'm gonna try to do it within the 2 minutes, is just that we're sitting here talking about the economic disparity and all that lovely shit, and it's just kind of like we've got this, but it's like it's just not working for the American people, and it's only gonna work for a matter it seems like we're getting down to the final seconds, down to one where we have to pull a plug for something different. Well, exactly. And Andrew Yang, to me, needs to start campaigning like now, because
Right.
like I'm really terrified about the Biden administration not doing
It's
a
the
goddamn
final
thing,
countdown.
Yeah.
and
Well,
us losing, turning around and losing to, let's just go ahead and say Trump 2.0 in 2024. And Andrew Yang needs to be out there in the forefront now, not later.
we've got to get past that situation where so many Americans have this idea of capitalism that they're just temporarily embarrassed millionaires. They're really not. It's a fluke to take off. It's like, so I read about a 17-year-old kid came up with something, forgot what it was, and then he's 25 now and he's a billionaire. Well, not everybody does that, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
No.
you know,
And just because he's a billionaire doesn't mean that the next person can be even a 100,000-aire. The next, you know, like there's not even that guaranteed. Like the fact that I make what I make right now is stupid.
All right. Hopefully everyone enjoyed that. Catch us back here next week.
Woohoo!
Uh,
Bye.
uh,
That's it.